The night visitor. Imagine waking up in the middle of the night, in your own bed, in your own home. You're safe, you're comfortable, until you realize you can't move. Your chest feels pinned down, your breath shallow, your voice trapped in your throat. And then, you see it. A shadow in the doorway. Someone is standing inside your room, watching. The setup. In 2010, Emma was a 24-year-old graduate student. She lived in a small cottage just outside her university town. It wasn't fancy, but it had character, creaky hardwood floors, ivy growing up the stone walls, and an old fireplace she rarely used. For 2 years, Emma had shared the place with 2 roommates. But after graduation, both moved out, leaving Emma alone for the first time. At first, she was thrilled. No more messy kitchens. No more waiting for the shower. Just quiet, peace. But sometimes, too much quiet has its own weight. Her first night alone, Emma left the lamp on. The silence was overwhelming, no background chatter, no muffled music, no one moving around in the house. Just the hum of the refrigerator, and the occasional creak of the old cottage settling. Still, she slept fine that first night. It was the second night when things began. The first encounter. Emma was jolted awake around 3 a.m. Her eyes opened suddenly, like her body had sensed something before her mind had caught up. She tried to roll over, but couldn't. Her arms wouldn't move. Her legs felt like lead. Panic rose in her chest. She tried to shout, but only a tiny croak came out, barely a breath. And then her eyes adjusted to the shadows of her room. That's when she saw it. A figure stood in the doorway. Tall. Thin. Shoulders slightly hunched. A hood or shroud covered its head. At first, she thought it was one of her roommates, until her brain reminded her, "You're alone." Emma's heartbeat thundered so loudly she swore it would wake the neighbors. She blinked, desperate to wake herself, to end whatever dream this was. But the figure didn't vanish. It stayed. And then, it began to move. Slowly. One deliberate step into the room. Then another. Emma strained against her invisible bonds. She wanted to scream, to thrash, to do anything to break free, but her body betrayed her. The figure was halfway across the room now. It tilted its head slightly, like it was studying her. Emma's eyes filled with tears. She begged silently in her head, "Wake up. Please, wake up." And then, in the blink of an eye, it was gone. Her body released. She bolted upright, gasping, drenched in sweat. The doorway was empty. The room was silent. It was over. Or so she thought. The pattern. Over the next week, Emma experienced the same nightmare every night. Always around 3 a.m., always waking with paralysis, always that figure in the doorway. She began dreading sleep. She left more lights on. She played music softly in the background. None of it helped. Each night, the figure came closer. Sometimes it stayed in the doorway. Sometimes it drifted to the side of her bed. One night, she felt its presence so near she swore she could hear breathing, slow, deep, in rhythm with her own. Every morning, she woke exhausted. Her friends noticed the bags under her eyes, her distracted demeanor. She brushed it off as stress. But privately, she was terrified. She researched online, stumbling into forums about sleep paralysis. The descriptions matched her experiences perfectly. Hallucinations. A shadow person in the room. A sense of dread. It was comforting, but only for a moment. Because sleep paralysis doesn't explain what happened next. The night it changed. One Friday night, Emma forced herself to stay awake late, determined to break the cycle. She curled up on the couch with her laptop, playing movies until her eyes burned. Finally, around 2:30 a.m., she couldn't fight anymore. She trudged to her bed, whispering to herself, "It's just sleep paralysis. It's not real." She drifted off. And woke again. This time, her body was free. No paralysis. She rolled onto her back, relieved. For once, she had escaped it. But then she noticed the air in the room. It felt heavy, oppressive, like the oxygen had been sucked out. Her eyes adjusted to the dim lamplight. And there it was. Not in the doorway. Not across the room. But crouched, right beside her bed. Its face, if you could call it that, hovered inches from hers. A void beneath the hood. Not skin. Not eyes. Just emptiness. Emma's scream tore through the silence. She scrambled backwards, slamming against the headboard. She fumbled for the lamp, twisting the switch. Light flooded the room. And it was gone. The doorway was empty. The floor bare. But Emma swore she could still feel its presence, lingering like smoke after a fire. The aftermath. That was the last night Emma ever slept in the cottage. She packed her things in a frenzy the next morning and begged a friend to let her crash on their couch. Eventually, she broke her lease and moved into a different apartment across town. For years, she refused to talk about it. When she finally did, she described it with one phrase: it wasn't a dream. It was something real. She never saw the figure again. But she never forgot it, either. And sometimes, late at night, when she wakes suddenly without reason, she still checks the doorway. Just to make sure. Reflection. So what did Emma encounter? Was it nothing more than stress-induced hallucinations, her exhausted brain turning shadows into monsters? Or did she really glimpse something else, something that feeds on silence, on vulnerability, and waits until you're alone to reveal itself? Emma never got her answer. But hers is just one story of a terrifying close call. Because sometimes, danger doesn't creep in from the shadows. Sometimes, it calls you directly. The phone call. Imagine sitting down for dinner with the person you love. The day was ordinary, nothing out of place. Then, out of nowhere, a phone starts ringing, and the voice on the other end doesn't just know who you are, they know where you are. The setup. Mark and Lisa had been married for just over a year when they finally bought their first home. It wasn't perfect, the carpet was dated, the backyard overgrown, the neighbors nosy. But it was theirs. Mark, a practical, easygoing man in his 30s, worked in IT at a nearby firm. Lisa, 28, was a schoolteacher who loved decorating and dreamed of turning the house into something cozy and welcoming. Their first few weeks in the house were busy, painting walls, unpacking boxes, planting flowers. By the end of the month, they had settled into a routine. Dinner together at 7, cleanup, then a movie or reading before bed. It felt like the start of something good. But one evening in late September, that sense of comfort was ripped away by something small, something they could not have predicted, a single phone call. The call. The couple had just sat down at the dining table with plates of pasta when Mark's old phone buzzed. It wasn't his current smartphone, it was his backup, an older model he kept charged just in case. Almost no one had the number anymore. The display read, "Unknown number." Lisa laughed, saying, "Who even has that number?" Mark shrugged. "Probably spam." He answered anyway, pressing the phone to his ear. What he heard froze him in place. A voice, low, raspy, and disturbingly calm, whispered, "I'm here." Mark's brow furrowed. "Who is this?" But before he could say more, the line went dead. Lisa asked what happened. Mark brushed it off, saying it must have been a prank, but something in his eyes gave him away. He looked unsettled. They finished dinner in silence. Escalation. That night, around 1 a.m., Lisa woke to the sound of buzzing. She turned and saw Mark sitting on the edge of the bed, staring down at the same old phone in his hands. The screen glowed with another unknown number. Mark hesitated, then answered. This time, there was no whisper. Only silence. Then, faintly, like someone speaking through a tunnel. "I see you." Mark shot to his feet. "Who is this? How did you get this number?" The call ended. Lisa sat up, alarmed. She asked if it was a prankster, a friend. But Mark's hands were trembling. He blocked the number and tossed the phone onto the dresser. They lay awake for hours after that, straining to hear noises outside. The house creaked and groaned like it always did, but every sound made them flinch. The fear grows. The next morning, they tried to laugh it off. "Creeps exist," Mark said. "It's nothing." He even considered throwing the old phone away. But that evening, when Mark came home from work, the landline phone, the one installed by the previous owners, was ringing. Lisa answered. At first, it was static. Then, faintly, that same raspy voice. "Nice house." Lisa slammed the phone down, shaking. Mark stormed outside, checking the street, the yard, the bushes. Nothing. The neighborhood looked normal. People mowing lawns, kids playing. No one suspicious. But someone, somewhere, had their numbers. Someone was watching. The breaking point. Over the next week, the calls continued. Always from blocked or unknown numbers. Always brief. Always personal. Sometimes it was. "You look tired. Blue shirt today. I like your dog." They didn't even own a dog. Other times it was just breathing. Mark and Lisa reported it to the police. The officer said they could file a report, but unless there was a direct threat, there wasn't much to be done. "Probably some scammer with software to spoof numbers," he said. But the couple knew better. This wasn't random. This was targeted. One night, Lisa suggested unplugging all the phones and ignoring it. Mark agreed. But that very night, at 3 a.m., Lisa's cell phone, her personal cell, lit up. The message displayed on the lock screen made her blood run cold. "I'm in." The climax. Mark grabbed the phone. He tried calling the number back, but it was blocked. He turned on every light in the house, checked every lock, scoured the basement and attic. Nothing. Lisa was crying, clutching her knees on the couch. Finally, desperate, Mark called the phone company. They ran checks, changed numbers, added blocks. The harassment stopped for 3 days. They let themselves breathe. But on the fourth night, while Lisa was folding laundry in the living room, her phone buzzed again. A text. "Don't worry. I'll wait." Her hands shook so violently she dropped the phone. The aftermath. 2 days later, Mark and Lisa packed bags and stayed with relatives out of state. When they returned a week later, the house was quiet. No calls, no texts. Eventually, they moved, never telling anyone their new landline number, never giving out their old backup cell. The calls never returned. But Lisa still keeps that final text saved on her phone, the one she can't bring herself to delete. She says it's a reminder that sometimes, danger doesn't knock. Sometimes, it dials first. So who was behind those calls? A stalker? A hacker? A stranger who picked their number at random? Or was it something else, something that doesn't need wires, towers, or devices to reach us? Mark and Lisa never found out. But the woods are full of secrets too. And sometimes, when you're alone in the trees, you realize you're not alone at all. Forest echoes. Imagine camping in the middle of the woods with your best friends. The fire is dying down, the night air is crisp, and you're surrounded by nothing but trees and stars. You close your eyes, drifting into sleep. But then, you wake to the sound of footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Circling your tent. And you know for a fact, no one in your group is awake. The setup. In the summer of 2015, 5 college friends from Portland, Oregon, decided to celebrate the end of finals with a weekend camping trip. They wanted to escape the noise of the city, the grind of classes, and find somewhere quiet where they could just be young again. The group, Sam, Derek, Maya, Claire, and Lucas, piled into 2 cars and drove north into the Mount Hood National Forest. None of them were experienced outdoorsmen, but they weren't completely clueless either. Sam had grown up hiking with his dad, and Lucas had a decent tent and gear. By the time they found a clearing and set up camp, it was late afternoon. They pitched 2 tents, gathered firewood, and roasted hot dogs as the sun dipped below the trees. It was exactly what they had hoped for: laughter, music from a portable speaker, the kind of freedom that only comes from being far away from everything. When the fire burned low, one by one, they slipped into their tents. The forest went quiet except for the hum of insects. And then, things changed. The first signs. Sam, who had always been a light sleeper, woke around 2 a.m. At first, he thought it was just the usual noises of the forest, branches creaking, wind rustling the canopy. But then he heard it. A cough. Soft, human, and unmistakably close. He froze. His friends were asleep in the tent beside him. He lay perfectly still, straining to listen. A few seconds later, another cough. This time, right outside his tent wall. Sam's throat went dry. He slowly reached for his flashlight, unzipped the tent just enough to peer outside. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing nothing. Just the clearing, the fire pit reduced to faint orange coals, and the endless trees. He told himself it had to be one of his friends, maybe Derek stepping outside. But when he whispered, "Derek, Maya," there was no reply. The forest swallowed his words whole. He zipped the tent shut, heart pounding, and eventually drifted back to sleep. But that was just the beginning. The footsteps. Around 4 a.m., Sam woke again. This time, it wasn't a cough. It was footsteps. Soft, deliberate crunches on the pine needles and leaves. Pacing. Circling. He held his breath, praying one of his friends would wake up too. But the others slept soundly, oblivious. The footsteps moved closer, then stopped. Right outside his tent. Sam's skin prickled. He slowly shifted, careful not to make noise. Whoever was out there was standing just feet away, listening. Minutes passed. Nothing. Then, without warning, the steps started again, moving around the camp, pausing, circling. Sam considered unzipping the tent and shouting, but fear rooted him in place. Finally, after what felt like hours, the sounds faded into the trees. When the first light of dawn broke, Sam rushed out to check the campsite. At first, he saw nothing unusual. But then, near the edge of his tent, pressed deep into the soft earth, was a single footprint. Large. Heavy. And unlike any of the boots they had brought. Tension in the group. At breakfast, Sam told the others what he had heard. Derek laughed. "Dude, it's the woods. Animals, branches, whatever. You scared yourself." Maya looked uneasy but tried to brush it off. Could have been another camper passing by. But Lucas and Claire exchanged glances. They hadn't heard anything, but Sam's pale face and trembling hands told them he wasn't joking. Still, they stayed. The second night, they built a bigger fire, told themselves they were fine, and tried to laugh away the tension. But Sam didn't sleep. He lay awake, flashlight in hand, staring at the nylon walls of his tent. And when the footsteps returned, he was ready. The second night. It started earlier this time. Midnight. First, silence, the kind of silence that feels wrong, when even the crickets stop chirping. Then, faint crunches. One step. Another. Sam held his breath. He glanced at Derek sleeping beside him, completely unaware. The steps circled again. Slow. Deliberate. This time, Sam couldn't resist. He unzipped the tent a few inches and shone his flashlight out into the clearing. For a split second, the beam caught something. A figure. Tall, broad-shouldered, standing at the edge of the clearing, half hidden by trees. The light hit its face, or rather, the place where its face should have been. Sam couldn't make out features, just a pale blur. And then it turned, and walked back into the darkness. Sam scrambled backward, shaking Derek awake. But by the time Derek sat up groggily, the figure was gone. The rest of the night passed in terror. Every snap of a twig made them flinch. By morning, Sam was done. The aftermath. He told the group they needed to leave. Now, Derek argued, they'd only just arrived, and nothing had happened to prove danger. But Maya and Claire backed Sam. Even Lucas, usually the calmest, admitted he felt off about the place. They packed quickly, their laughter gone, replaced with tension. As they left the clearing, Sam turned back one last time. That's when he noticed it. Near the fire pit, in the soft earth, was another footprint. This one wasn't large like the first. It was small. Child-sized. Barefoot. Sam never returned to Mount Hood again. And even years later, when he tells the story, his voice shakes. He swears they weren't alone out there. That something had been watching. And that whatever it was, wanted them to know it. So who, or what, was in those woods? A lost hiker? A prankster? Or something stranger, something that lives just beyond the tree line, waiting for the fire to burn low before it steps closer? Sam never found out. But not all strange encounters happen in the woods. Sometimes, they appear in the reflection staring back at you. Mirror reflection. Have you ever stared into a mirror late at night and thought, what if something looked back at me that wasn't me? For one teenage girl, that thought became a reality. And the close call she had with her own reflection still haunts her to this day. The setup. In 2018, a 16-year-old named Jenna lived with her mom in a modest 2-bedroom house in Ohio. It was just the two of them since Jenna's father had passed away when she was little. Jenna wasn't the type to believe in the supernatural. She was practical, sharp, and focused on her grades. But she did have one habit that made her mom uneasy, staying up late, scrolling on her phone in front of the vanity mirror in her room. The mirror was old, a tall, freestanding piece with a thin wooden frame that had belonged to Jenna's grandmother. Her mom had warned her, half joking, don't sit there too long at night, or you'll see something you don't want to. Jenna would roll her eyes. It's just a mirror, Mom. But one night, she realized it might not be just a mirror. The first glitch. It was past midnight. Jenna sat at her vanity, earbuds in, watching videos on her phone. The house was quiet, her mom asleep down the hall. She glanced up at the mirror absent-mindedly, and froze. For the briefest second, her reflection lagged. She tilted her head, and in the glass, her reflection was a half-beat behind. Jenna blinked, rubbed her eyes, told herself it was exhaustion. But when she leaned closer, her reflection leaned too, perfectly in sync. Still, something felt wrong. She shut her laptop, climbed into bed, and tried to sleep. But sleep didn't come easy. The reflection changes. The next night, Jenna sat at the vanity again, determined to prove to herself it was nothing. At first, everything seemed normal. She brushed her hair, watched TikToks, laughed quietly. Then she noticed it. Her reflection was smiling. Not a wide grin, but a small, eerie smile tugging at the corner of her reflection's lips. The problem was, Jenna wasn't smiling. She froze, heart hammering, eyes locked on the glass. Slowly, she lifted her hand, testing. The reflection followed, moving perfectly. But the smile never faded. Her chest tightened. She grabbed her phone, turned off the lamp, and crawled into bed, pulling the covers over her head. She didn't sleep. She couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she swore she heard faint scratching, like fingernails against glass. The close call. The third night, Jenna told herself she wouldn't sit at the vanity. She'd go straight to bed. But around 1 a.m., she woke suddenly, her room colder than usual. Her eyes drifted toward the mirror in the corner. And that's when her blood ran cold. Her reflection was sitting upright in the mirror. She wasn't. She was lying flat in bed, covers up to her chin. But in the glass, her mirrored self was perched on the vanity chair, hands folded neatly in her lap, eyes locked on Jenna. Jenna's breath caught. She didn't move. Didn't blink. The reflection slowly tilted its head. That same unnatural smile spread wider, revealing teeth. And then, it lifted its hand and waved. Jenna shot up, flicked on the lamp, and the reflection instantly snapped back to normal, lying down just like her. She was shaking so badly she could barely breathe. She ran to her mom's room, sobbing, and refused to sleep in her own bed. Aftermath. The next morning, Jenna begged her mom to get rid of the mirror. Her mom, seeing her daughter's terror, agreed. They hauled it down into the basement and covered it with a sheet. For weeks after, Jenna avoided going down there. She refused to be near the mirror at all. But one night, when her mom was working late and Jenna was home alone, she heard a sound. Faint. Distant. Coming from the basement. A slow, deliberate scratching. She locked herself in her room until her mom returned. The mirror still sits in their basement today, covered and untouched. Jenna swears she'll never look into it again. So what did Jenna really see? Sleep deprivation? A trick of her tired mind? Or something far older, something bound to that mirror that found a way to show itself to her? Whatever it was, Jenna came terrifyingly close to something she can't explain, and she was lucky to walk away. But the final story isn't about luck. It's about fate. And one woman who came within seconds of never telling her story at all. Highway Phantom. You're driving down a dark, empty highway late at night. The road is silent, the world asleep, and it feels like you're the only soul for miles. Then, out of nowhere, you see a figure on the side of the road. You slow down, thinking they need help. But the moment you stop, you realize they've been waiting for you. The setup. In 2020, a woman named Rebecca was driving home from a weekend visit with her sister in rural West Virginia. It was nearly 1 a.m., and she had a 2-hour drive ahead of her. The stretch of highway she took was known for being lonely, miles of asphalt winding through hills and forest with barely any service stations. Rebecca wasn't worried though. She had made this trip dozens of times. She kept her windows rolled up, radio low, headlights cutting through the misty night. The world outside was swallowed in darkness. But then, she saw him. The figure. At first, Rebecca thought it was just her tired eyes playing tricks. On the shoulder of the road, a man stood completely still. He wore dark clothes, his posture rigid, his face obscured by the shadows. Rebecca's stomach dropped. She instinctively slowed her car. The man didn't move. Didn't flag her down. Didn't react at all. Just stood there, head slightly tilted, as if watching her approach. Her instinct screamed at her to keep driving, but something about the way he stood there, so still, so deliberate, froze her hands on the wheel. As she passed, she glanced into her rearview mirror. The man hadn't turned to watch her go. He was already facing the road again. Like he knew she'd look back. The second encounter. Rebecca tried to shake it off. People hitchhiked. People walked highways. It was weird, but not impossible. She drove another 5 miles, her nerves slowly settling. And then, her headlights illuminated another figure. Her heart lurched. It was the same man. Same posture. Same clothes. Same tilt of the head. But she hadn't seen any cars. No one had passed her. There was no way he could have gotten there on foot in that short time. Her hands tightened on the wheel. This time, she didn't slow down. She pressed harder on the gas, her eyes fixed dead ahead. When she glanced in the mirror again, he was gone. The close call. Rebecca's pulse hammered. She gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. She told herself, "Don't stop. Don't look. Just keep driving." But 10 minutes later, it happened again. Her headlights caught him on the side of the road. Only this time, he was standing in the middle of her lane. Rebecca screamed, swerved, barely managing to keep control of the car. The figure loomed in her headlights for a split second, pale face, eyes black, mouth twisted in something that looked almost like a grin. Then he was gone. No impact. No thud. Nothing. She pulled over, shaking violently, tears streaming down her face. She was sure she'd hit him. She scrambled out with her phone flashlight, searching the road. There was no one there. No body. No footprints. Nothing. But when she climbed back into her car, heart still racing, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. In the condensation on the inside of her windshield, just above the dashboard, were 4 long streaks. Finger marks. As if someone had dragged their hand across the glass, from the inside. Aftermath. Rebecca made it home that night, but she never drove that highway alone again. When she told her sister what happened, her sister paled. She said that stretch of road had a local legend, a man killed in a hit-and-run years ago, whose spirit supposedly appeared to lone travelers at night. The story went that if you stopped for him, he'd climb into your car. Rebecca never stopped. But she knows, she came terrifyingly close. So what was the highway phantom? A ghost forever replaying his death? A hallucination from exhaustion? Or something darker that stalks the lonely stretches of road, waiting for the next car to slow down? Whatever the truth, Rebecca's close call is a reminder that sometimes, the scariest things aren't in the woods, or the mirrors, or even the shadows. Sometimes, they're right in front of you,